All right, you're on.
I'm ready.
So I am conducting an interview right now, and it's October 13th, 2013. It's a Sunday afternoon. So to start off, what were your parents' names and where are they from?
My mother's name was Malka, but they called her Minnie. My father's name was Herschel, and they called him Harry. And my father came from the Poland-Lithuanian border, but in Poland, it was occupied at that time by Russia. And my mother came from Lithuania, and that, I believe, at that time was occupied by Russia.
Okay. So both your parents were immigrants?
Yes.
Okay. So where were you born?
I was born in Boston, at the New England Hospital for Women and Children, which is in
Okay.
Roxbury.
Okay. And when were you born?
March, there's a little debate about that. My mother said I was born on the 19th, but my birth certificate read the 18th of March, 1929. So I've used the 18th of March, 1929 as my birth date.
Okay. So was it because you were born very late at night and they weren't sure if it was
I think
the
I
next
was
day?
born, I don't really remember, but I think I was born somewhere in there. And I think that my mother probably remembered, gave birth from her point of view on the 18th, but it must have been the morning of the 19th when the doctor wrote up, the information.
Okay. So you've had two birthdays.
I had 2 birthdays.
All right. And where did you grow up as a child?
I grew up in Dorchester.
Dorchester. Okay. What street in Dorchester?
Well, we lived in 2 places. I lived in the corner of Nelson and Evans, and then when I was in the 3rd grade, we moved to Callender Street.
Okay. And so where did you go to school? And when did you start going to school? And what school was it?
In the kindergarten. I didn't get the rest of your question.
What school? What was the school
I
called?
don't remember. Robert Swan. But then when we moved, I went to the Robert Treat Payne.
Okay. And how old were you when you moved?
3rd grade. How was 3rd grade? 8, 9? 9
Okay.
years old? Started at 4. Yeah, probably 8.
Okay.
I started at 4.
And did you have a favorite subject in school? In elementary school?
I don't think so. I liked everything.
Okay.
I don't remember having a problem with anything.
And did you play any sports as a child?
Yeah, I played all kinds of sports, but not in a formal way. We didn't have the sports that you had like Pop Warner and baseball and things like that. We just had these sandlot games. You pick up some kids, you play tag or you play baseball, or just like that, but not really
formal.
organized the way things are today.
Okay. And what kind of activities did you and your friends do for fun in elementary school?
That goes back. We played dodgeball. I remember that. We used to, I don't know what they call it. They used to throw a ball at you. You hit it with your fist, and then you ran around the bases. We did that, and that's all in elementary school. I mean, that goes back a long way for me.
And describe your family's involvement in the Jewish community.
My mother had an Orthodox bent, but I think as I review her life and my life with her, I think she felt uncomfortable being in America because she didn't know the language, and she was think she had inferior feelings about herself. So she was religious in the house, so to speak. You know, she lit the candles on Friday night, she kept kosher, and she encouraged us. I had to go to Hebrew school, and my father was a renegade. He did not like religion for reasons which I adopted myself.
Okay. Why didn't he? Why do you think he didn't like religion?
Well, he didn't like religion because of the hypocrisy that's involved in religion. In addition to which, I don't think he felt that to obey the dicta of 5,000 years ago was a particularly good idea.
Okay. And why did your parents move to the United States?
For economic reasons. My mother's family was sponsored by an uncle. She had an uncle in Plymouth who owned mills, and he sponsored the whole family to come to this country. My father left because it was time for him to be conscripted into the Russian army, and the Russian army treated the Jews terribly. Worse than they treated the rats, I think. So he made his way to the coast, and he came to America. And I think he came for religious freedom, to escape the persecution that was, not that he was religious, but to escape religious persecution.
So when your parents came to the United States, did their parents come with them, or did they stay
My
there?
father came alone. He had a brother, an older brother, who was living here. My mother's family, she, her mother and father, and her brother and sister, and I think there were 2 half-brothers, and they all came over here.
So when they came over to the United States, did they first arrive in New York City, or did they first arrive in Boston?
I don't know. I don't know if they had to go through Ellis Island. I think at that time, maybe it was before, everybody had to go through Ellis Island. I'm not exactly sure whether they landed in Boston or in New York.
Okay, so why Boston? Why did they settle? Oh, was it because your uncle was already in Plymouth, and that's why?
I think that was probably the reason that they settled in Boston, because in those days, you couldn't do what you can do today. You had to have a sponsor. You had to be healthy mentally and physically, and you could not go on to public welfare. You had to have a means of survival, somehow or other, some sort of income.
And where did your parents meet?
Oh, that's interesting. My father shared a room with somebody that he knew, the son of somebody he knew. So he shared it, like you shared a room with your brother when you were very young. He shared a room, and my mother's family lived on the floor below. And my mother went upstairs for some reason, I don't know what the reason was, and she saw my father standing there at the ironing board, ironing his money, ironing his paper money. And that was, so they were living in the same house, actually. Tell me when I get out of the first grade, will you?
Alright, so
Where we at?
So we're resuming the interview. There are some technical difficulties, but we're back on. So we missed the story of the snowball story. So if you just wanna, can you just tell that again to the camera?
So we were going home for lunch, and I was with this other boy, and we threw snowballs at some girls, a couple of girls, and we were off the school property. And I don't remember hitting the girls, maybe we did. But then when we got back to school, I was called down to the office, and the principal was very upset with me. And she was gonna rattan me, you got the rattan type of big, long, thin thing that wavered back and forth and stung. So she's told me to hold out my hand, which I did obediently, and then she raised the rattan over her head, and she was ready to come down, and as she came down, I withdrew my hand, and she hit herself on the knee. And she didn't really enjoy that too much. So she gave me a couple of whacks, and she told me to go back to my room. I remember, I'm pretty sure she hit me on both hands. But they did, they walked around and they hit you. And you never told anybody when you got home that you got into trouble in school and the teacher hit you. Because I started to say, I don't know what they have. But Sam Levinson was a Spanish teacher who became a comedian. And he said, you never complained if you got into trouble at school. Because when you got home and you told your parents about it, you'd get hit again.
Okay. So aside from school, what sort of problems did your family face as you were growing up?
Well, as Grandma explained to you, there was no surplus of money. Everybody was very concerned with money. I remember we were poor. My mother would turn the collars. She was a seamstress, and she would take the collars off my shirt, turn them inside out, and sew them back on. And she would always do that with the cuff of my sleeves. She would turn them around, and so that I could wear them. Or you'd wear patched clothing, which today would be an abomination.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't waste. We shut the lights when we left the room. And we ate all our food because people in Europe were starving.
Okay. So what kind of work experience did you have growing up? Did you work any jobs?
Yeah, I think when I was 12 years old, I worked as an order boy. I delivered orders. And I did that for a little bit, and I had an old baby carriage that I was using, and the other kids all had regular wagons, so I wasn't happy with that, so I quit. And then I went to work. My father got me a job in retail in the market near where he worked. There were a lot of stores, so I worked there. I started there, I think I was a sophomore in high school, and I worked there right through my senior year, Friday nights and Saturdays.
What did you sell?
Meat.
Okay. And were you on any sports teams in high school?
No.
Okay. Did you have any favorite subjects in high school for studying or learning?
Well, when you say favorite, I inclined toward languages. I liked languages. I liked history. I was good at math. I was a reasonably good student overall.
What languages did you learn?
Latin, French. That was in high school. Latin and French in high school.
Okay. And
English.
Okay, English too, right? What did you do after you graduated high school?
Well, that summer I went to work in my father's place, and then in the fall I was lucky enough to get into college.
And this was in the
It was 1946.
1946. Okay. What college did you get into?
Colby, Colby.
Okay, so that's in Maine, correct?
In Waterville, Maine.
So did you go out there and live in the dorms?
Did what?
Did you live in the dorm room?
Not right away, because the only way I could get into school was if I provided my own housing. It was 1946 and everybody was coming back from the war. Many of the students went a year to school and then they went into the service. The war was over and they were all coming back at one time. So if I could provide my own housing, they would accept me at school. So fortunately, my father had distant relatives who had a kind of a hotel restaurant. And they had a son who was my age who was off at prep school. And they said I could use his room. So that's how I went to Colby.
So so you lived in a hotel?
Yes.
When you went to college?
Just for a couple of weeks until there was an opening in the dorm. And when there was an opening in the dorm, I had put my name in, and they called me and they told me I could live at the dorm. So I went and I lived at the dorm.
So, how did you get back and forth from Dorchester to Colby? Did you have a car?
No, Colby is 180 miles away. I live there.
Okay, but how did you get from Dorchester to Colby?
Well, sometimes I took the train.
Okay.
Yeah, on the way back, sometimes I got a ride, but train.
Okay. And what did you go into Colby with a predetermined major, or did you go in undecided?
No, I went in with a predetermined major,
What was that?
pre-med,
Why did you decide to do pre-med?
because my brother was pre-med.
Okay. So when you were entering college, had your brother already completed college?
Yes, he was in graduate school.
And what college did your brother go to?
Colby,
And what graduate school was he in?
Tufts Dental.
Okay. So were you following the footsteps of your older brother?
Apparently that was the way it was laid out, yeah.
Okay. So what was it? What was your experience like at Colby? Did you enjoy it?
I liked Colby. I was home, I was free. There was a lot of social activities. There was always somebody to talk to be with. I shared a room with it was actually a little suite that we had.
So, were you involved in a fraternity?
Yes,
What fraternity was it?
I felt the thigh.
Okay.
No, I just made that up.
Okay.
I think it was Zady later Shixie.
Okay. So no fraternities.
The fraternity was a Jewish fraternity. I think it was Tau Delta Phi,
It was.
to be serious.
And you were in that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. How was your experience there?
It was fine, it was okay. I wasn't there for that long because I left after 2 years.
So after 2 years, you got your degree at Colby?
No, I didn't, I just left school.
Why did you leave school?
It was a family situation, and I didn't think that I had the qualifications to become a physician.
So where did you go after those 2 years at Colby?
I went to work with my father because he had just bought out his partner, and he was kind of insecure, having come from a foreign country, and he thought that I would be an asset, or my family thought that I would be an asset, and I would learn the business, and then I could be very helpful to my father. So that's influenced me to leave college.
So so you left college and you went to work at the wholesale meat shop?
Okay,
Is that true?
close enough.
Okay. And how long did you stay? How long did you continue working? How long did you work
8
at
years.
that? 8 years?
Yes.
So what were those 8 years like? Where did you live? And
I lived with my parents, and I joined the National Guard, and I decided that I wanted to go back to school, so I went back to school at night.
so you were in the National Guard, you went to school at night, and you worked
Yes.
at a meat shop all at the same time.
Yes,
How did you have enough time to do all those things?
I don't know. There are 28 hours in a day, aren't there?
All right.
8 days a week.
Okay. So, how old? So after you finished those 8 years, how old were you?
27.
And what did you do? And what happened to the meat shop? Did it go out of business?
Yes, we went out of business after I left. My father couldn't handle it alone, but I was not happy in that area of work and doing what I was doing.
Why were you
So-
unhappy?
Why?
Yeah.
So I didn't like it.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that college spoiled me for it. It was a work of labor, and people with whom I associated thought differently than I did. So I went back to school at night, and then I met this girl.
What school did you work at night? Did you learn at night?
BU, Boston University.
So as you were working at the meat shop, you went to Boston University at night
Yes, 2 nights a week.
to continue your pre-med undergraduate degree?
Just to get some. No, I wouldn't want pre-med anymore.
Oh.
So I took a course in psychology. I took a course. I tried to get into accounting, but I couldn't get into accounting. It was full, and I took a course in economics.
Okay. So as you were saying, you met a girl as you were studying at BU?
Yeah, and working, doing all the things that you described. Yeah, I started to go out with this girl, and
What was her name?
Shirley.
Okay. And you met her at BU?
No, I met her at the beach.
Okay.
Want to hear the story of Shirley?
Sure. Sure, the camera wants to also.
Shirley's father bought meat from my father. And my father and another customer, not her father, but another customer were talking. And the other customer said, because her father had had a heart attack, Shirley's father had had a heart attack, and her older sister Lorraine was coming in to pick up the meats and stuff, to bring back to the store. And they said, what a nice girl she was, what a fine girl. Look what she was doing. She was coming into the market. She was picking up the meats. And this man, whose son had gone out with Shirley's older sister, said he has a younger daughter. And the younger daughter, as nice as the older one is, the younger daughter, I hear, is even nicer. So that kind of stuck in my head. It registered in my head. And I thought about it, and I thought perhaps, I would like to go out with her, but I didn't think she'd go out with me for some reason. So I never bothered. But I fixed up one of my friends with her. And then I got to see her, because I had never seen her before. So I was standing on the beach with a friend of mine, and this young woman came over, very cute, and she said, "Hi, how are you?" I had forgotten who she was, but that was Shirley. So that summer we started to go out together, and then in December we became engaged, and in the following May we got married. So you never know what's going to happen, because I didn't even think she'd go out with me.
Okay. And back to to school. So when you were 27, after you finished working at the meat shop, where did you go from there?
I was at BU.
Right.
Yeah.
So you studied psychology and accounting?
No, I studied biology.
Okay. And did you get your undergraduate degree from
Yes.
BU?
Yes, it took me 11 years to get through college, but I did it in 3.
Okay. And then after you got your degree in biology, then where did you go?
I went to dental school.
Which dental school?
I started at NYU.
So you moved to New York City?
No, I moved to New York City, but your mother was born. So your mother and your grandmother stayed with her mother.
Ah. Okay.
And I was,
As you were in...
and I wasn't happy there, so I transferred to Tufts.
Okay. And so then how many years did you spend at Tufts?
4.
And you got your dental degree?
Yes.
And then from there, did you start working in private practice?
Yes. Yeah, I worked for somebody part-time, and then I also started my own practice.
And where was that located?
Malden, Massachusetts.
Okay. And where were you living at the time that you were in dental school?
We were living in Brighton, not far from where you are, on Bell Vista Road, which is off of Kelton Street, which is off of Commonwealth Avenue. It's a couple of blocks up from Commonwealth Avenue.
Okay. And then when did you move to Lexington?
1966, September 6th, 1966, we moved to Lexington.
And how old was Brenda when you moved to Lexington?
I think Brenda was when we moved, I think Brenda had just finished the 3rd grade.
And you moved to this house?
This house,
Okay.
and our roots are deep.
Okay. Do you have any other interesting stories that you want to tell as long as we're here?
Well, I don't know, I got a lot of interesting stories, but I don't know if you want to hear them. I have to think about that.
Oh, okay. All right, great. Well, thanks for
Oh, you all
your
through with
time.
me?
Yeah, I don't think... Oh, actually, there's another question that I was going to ask. Did you do much traveling as... Did you ever do much traveling to other countries?
We went to Canada, that's another country, and then we went to Italy, and then we went to Israel, and we went to Spain, and we went to Aruba, which is in South America, but I did not travel. The first plane flight that I ever took, I was 42 years old.
Wow.
And it wasn't because I was afraid of flying, it was because I had always kept my nose to the grindstone. That was an expression that we used because we were always trying to make a living. And at the beginning, things were not easy for us.
So were airplanes around at the time that you were born? They were.
I think the Wright brothers flew an airplane like in 1903 or 1907.
But commercially available airplanes weren't around until later, right?
Yeah, yeah. What really developed the airplane travel industry was the jet engine, because the planes could go much faster, and you could travel to Europe in 5-6 hours, or you go out to the West Coast in 5-6 hours, which before would take a much longer period of time. So that really helped develop, the foreign travel.
And did you ever used to go to Red Sox games?
Yes.
Did you enjoy that?
I like that. When you ask wrestling, I got to tell you, another interesting story comes up. When I was a kid, BU Field was Braves Field at that time. And for $1, you could get a season's ticket called the Knothole Game. And every time you went to the game, you would pay 10 cents. And you would sit out in the left field bleachers, well, they were kind of like bleachers, left field bleachers. But for 10 cents, you could go to the game. The Red Sox were always held in much higher esteem. But I did go to a few games, yes.
So were you a bigger Braves fan or a Red Sox fan?
I imagine I was a Red Sox fan because the Braves didn't do well. And the reason I went to the thing was very inexpensive to go. For 10 cents, once you paid your $1, you could go to the games, as many as you wanted.
So was it a big deal for you when the Red Sox won the World Series?
Well, that was just recently. I mean, I was an old man when they won the series. And a big deal, I was happy about it, but a big deal, no.
Okay.
You're a big deal to me. They weren't a big deal.
And what about the Boston Celtics? Did you used to go to the Boston
Yes.
Celtics games?
I did.
Which players did you used to watch?
Bob Cousy, George Kafton. What's his name? He was And then I saw Larry Bird toward the end. I took Eric and John. We went to see Grandma was in Florida with her mother. Excuse me. And we saw Larry Bird and the Gazelle there. So, what was the other fellow? Oh yeah, Heinsohn. He still is an announcer at the Celtics game. And yeah, I went to basketball. We used to sit up in, they call it nosebleed territory now, for 60 cents.
And did you ever used to go to Patriot games?
They were what?
Patriot games? New England Patriots?
I never went to a Patriot game. I went to one Patriot game when I took Eric to a Patriots game. We saw them play the Miami Dolphins. They had a terrible team, and that day they won. But where we were sitting, I tried to get a ticket early, and I got the ticket. But you know how the stands go? The end zone is here, and the stands go out here. Well, we were over here somewhere. I think we were in the next town. I think we were in Attleboro. But that's the only Vegas game that I went to.
Okay. So, did you used to watch Bill Russell?
Yes, that's what I was trying to think of Bill Russell. Yes. Yeah, I was very impressed with Bill Russell. He was like a gazelle, he was so graceful.
Okay. And was there, this is a different topic, was there racial segregation in Boston when you were growing up?
There was never racial segregation. There was racial discrimination, but there was no segregation here in the North.
So did you go to school with black children?
There were a few blacks in the school, not many, but there were a few blacks, yes.
Were they discriminated against?
Yeah. Yeah, they were just treated terribly. I mean, everybody ignored them and they were very hostile because the blacks at that time were supposed to be inferior.
So were you friends with any of the black children?
No, there weren't that many of them. And we kind of stuck together. The Jews stuck together with the Jews more or less, you know, and the blacks stuck, even now today, the blacks seem to want to stick together when they come out to a community like Lexington or something like that. Our kids used to complain, or make the observation, not complain, that the black kids all stuck together. And they would even make fun of the white kids. But segregation was in the South, where they had to go to separate toilets, separate fountains, separate restaurants. They had to sit in the back of the bus. That was just segregation.
And were there any, I might be totally off with the history here, but did any lynchings occur during your lifetime?
Lynchings? I think so, yeah. I think so, yeah. In the 30s, yeah, they were lynching black people in the South. As a matter of fact, memory, it escapes me. In Mississippi, they made a movie out of it called Mississippi Burning. There were 3 kids, 2 white and 1 black, and they were fostering integration and not segregation. The 3 of them were shot. There was Schwerner, Goodman, and I try to remember the other fellow's name, but anyhow, 2 of those 3 were Jewish. And they shot them and they buried them in something in a swamp. And then they did find out about it. But you could do anything to the blacks. They sicked dogs on them, they hit them with hoses, they were beaten. There was a kid there, he whistled at a white woman and they hung him.
And do you remember when Rosa Parks
Yes.
did her...
She wouldn't get up and get in the back of the bus.
Yeah, she stayed on the front of the bus.
Well, she stayed where she wasn't supposed to, according to them. And she was just too tired to get up. That's what she said.
What year was it? Was this in? Do you
I don't know, I think that was in the early 60s or late 50s, but yeah.
Okay. And then, were you? How was it? How were people affected by MLK? Was there usually a positive reaction towards him?
I got to tell you another story, full of stories. When I went back to BU, Martin Luther King was there as a graduate student for his doctorate in divinity. I had seen Martin Luther King. Of course, I didn't know who he was at the time.
Had you met him?
No. But I used to see him because I went to the College of Liberal Arts and in the science buildings. And then there was like a little makeshift thing where I took a course and I would walk by the divinity school. And I must have seen him at least a half a dozen times. Of course, at that time, I didn't know who he was. Okay.
So when you saw him, what was he doing?
He was walking.
And how did you know it was him?
Because in retrospect, when I began, because I remembered what he looked like. And in retrospect, and also, there weren't many blacks. See, it's not like today. But anyhow, so the impact that Martin Luther King had on me is dramatic then, was dramatic then and is today. Because he changed things around when he said that you don't measure a person by the color of their skin, but by the quality of their integrity. And I don't know if that's a direct quote, but that's what he said, and that's so true. And the blacks have contributed a great deal, especially in entertainment, in sports. You know, I look on Sundays, I watch the football game, or the college games. Almost everybody is black. You know, they show the pictures of the professional athletes in the National Football League. 9 out of the 11 are black. So in baseball, basketball is a black sport. There was a black comedian and he said, basketball to the black man is what golf is to the white man.
Well, with Tiger Woods also, he's a black
But
golfer.
he's of recent vintage, but he's only
Right.
one black. We're all the blacks.
Right.
There was terrible, not segregation, but discrimination. The discrimination, as I review it in my mind, was awful. Awful, awful, awful.
And did you have any pets growing up?
Yeah, I had a dog. His name was Nicky, he was a Cocker Spaniel. And when I went off to college, my parents went to visit somebody, they left him on the porch, and then when they came out, he was gone. So they don't know whether he was stolen, or he walked away, or what have you. Then I had another, it was World War II, and there was a dog there, it was a German Shepherd, and his name was Rex. And my father would bring home some bones, and I would give it to Rex. And Rex followed me around like I was his master. And we lived in a 3-family house, and he'd always be on the porch, on the first floor, waiting for me.
Okay.
I don't think I had any goldfish.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have.
Okay.
So, thank you for the interview.
My pleasure. Anytime.
All right.